Hi there. I'm Craig Clair. I'm a Vice President and Principal Analyst at Forrester Research. I cover areas like business process management and case management and some areas of cognitive technologies. And I'm here today at the request of Nugent to really talk to them and to talk to their customers and prospects and just anybody who wants to listen, really about the role of business process management in commercial lending. So we do distinguish between commercial lending and retail lending, and we'll talk about that in this short video. Thank you for being here. Banks are going through a lot right now, as we know. There's a big difference between the two. Retail banking, of course, deals with car loans and home loans and mortgages, things like that, where the asset's pretty visible for any kind of reclamation of the asset. Those processes tend to be more straight through. They don't deal with as many people. They don't deal with as many back-end systems. If you take commercial lending, asset-based lending as it's called, you're dealing with a lot of people. You have credit managers, you have legal and compliance, you have a much more important role for the relationship manager, and many more diverse systems that they have to deal with. So loan tracking, the loan origination system, maybe some compliance and suitability, maybe some know your customer and KYC type of aspects. So because of the combination of people and systems, you have a lot more process gaps and much harder exceptions that derive from them. So there's a much bigger challenge. They tend not to be as straight through, and they tend to really require a lot of coordination among people that's not required in the retail side. The other aspect that's really driving the difference is a lot in commercial banking, a lot of the transactions have become fairly commoditized. So what that means is that advice becomes much more important. So advice to a business that may have 4 or 5 different touch points with the bank really requires having a holistic, much more of a context of the customer, which has been a real struggle, in the global banking in particular, but also in commercial banking. So the ability to have information about all of the customers' relationships with the bank is much more critical, on the commercial banking side. Companies are under tremendous pressure to digitize. And really that reflects trying to get to the same level of digitization as their customers. And that was really driven by mobile and social technologies of the past 4 years. So they're under tremendous pressure to do that. So companies need to build digitization and automation strategies, which really require BPM to be part of that, but also other technologies, such as analytics, which I mentioned previously, but also collaboration. If you think of it, the ability to disseminate information, disseminate knowledge, to be able to find experts, the ability to trap the activity streams related to a particular customer event. These are all things that really mask that sort of siloed aspect that companies have, and particularly in commercial lending with the loan tracking and the loan origination and the compliance systems and so forth, the sales systems that supports the relationship manager. The way to really get to a more agile state and a digital state, is to be able to use collaboration tools and technologies that really allow visibility to a much broader set of people that are involved in these processes. So that's one thing that I think really can help. So build a digital strategy, build an automation strategy, look to the emerging area of analytics and cognitive. Look to technologies like robotic process automation, RPA. Are bots that will replicate human activity and clicks in various processes. These can provide a tremendous lift to your customer self-service portal. They can free up people in the back office to do higher valued things, maybe look at that customer in a much different way. So that's a very, very important component to your digitization and automation strategy. So think of that center of excellence that you might have started years ago to transform and envision the process. Think of that as having a kind of reboot to think about how do I get to a digital business? How do I start leveraging data in a much better way? How do I take advantage of the Internet of Things? How do I really take advantage of these emerging cognitive technologies? That would be a great path to be on. Yeah, so that's a good question. It's a question I get a lot at Forrester. When should I use the tooling for process improvement that might be available in a loan origination system, versus using a agile layer on top of that, like business process management or dynamic case management? And you really have to look at what the two different capabilities offer. The rules, the workflows, the communications tend to be fairly hardwired in those more structured systems of record, that are underneath the loan process. What BPM does is it provides four things that are pretty critical for where commercial lending is going. First is rules management and rules governance. Viewing the rules as a real asset of the organization is really, really important. You don't really get rules management in those types of systems I talked about. Second is these systems, BPM, case management, were really, they don't do anything by themselves. They were really designed to be integrated in with other systems. That's where they draw the information and the nuance from. So as a result, they've developed much stronger APIs, much better ways to visualize the connections that they make to these other systems. So they're inherently more cross-platform and cross-system, and from an integration standpoint. Probably the biggest thing is having an independent process design surface. What I mean by that is, a point-and-click graphical environment that allows you to visualize the as-is process and to continuously improve it. So they really were built with this notion of continual process, improvement. The analytics in BPM and case management are just much stronger than they are in the more simple reporting, that's available in a lot of the underlying systems. So if you want business intelligence, being able to model reports, if you want some level of predictive capability, predictive analytics, and ultimately, as we'll talk about later, cognitive, those tend to be emerging much more strongly, in that agile layer. Architecturally, what companies are trying to do is to move the features and processes that touch the customer, to move them out of those underlying systems and move them into an independent layer so that you can have the same look and feel for communications, for example, that go to customers that may relate to each of the products. Because remember, each of those products may have its own underlying record system that may not care about the other products. So the more independent layer gives you the ability architecturally to support things like rules and customer communications and reporting and analytics more collectively across the portfolio of products. So in commercial lending, BPM has a really, really strong role. Take one of the use cases that's a real pain point right now, customer onboarding. Boarding a customer for potentially getting a commercial loan is a very painful process. Many banks lose customers because it takes so long. So building the rules, building the data collection, building all of that, all the reporting and that holistic view from the BPM layer really, really makes a lot of sense. The future of BPM in commercial lending is going to be one that's going to continually move closer to what Forrester calls the age of the customer desires. In other words, being able to have that contextual view of the customer, be able to not just be more about the back office, but be more about how the customer is interacting collectively, with a bank. Very, very strong role there, and we're seeing BPN move from that back office and production focus to more of this age of the customer support. I think secondly, analytics is going to be really, really powerful for the future of BPM. And I'll throw cognitive in there, which we use broadly to refer to a whole range of technologies from text analytics, natural language processing, chatbots. All of that collectively should be driven and orchestrated ultimately by business process management and case management, in a lot of scenarios. So those two elements, I think, are really going to change BPM, which has traditionally had a very production-oriented focus. It's going to have more of a customer focus, and it's going to be more integrated in with advanced analytics. Well, thanks for being here and listening, and hopefully some of this was of interest to you and can help you in your endeavors. I want to thank Nugent for the opportunity to speak to you, and feel free to reach out to Nugent directly or to Forrester if you have any questions about any of this content. Have a great day.